Video games have been one of this generation's most popular pastimes, even becoming a job for some people. Video games are seemingly having more and more mistakes per release, or at least fans are noticing the mistakes more, as more people begin to pick up a controller and get lost in hours of virtual quests. Some mistakes are so big that everyone notices them and can never unsee them. That's why in today's video, we're going to be going over the biggest mistakes in video games that fans have noticed. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. First up, Alfred can't tell time apparently. The Arkham series of Batman games is undoubtedly one of the best video game sagas of all times, with Batman Arkham City and Batman Arkham Knight receiving a great deal of praise. But one of the funniest and most glaring mistakes in the entire series comes from its third installment, Batman Arkham Origins. Arkham Origins is not the most popular game in the series. In fact, it's probably the opposite, but it's still a great game and a worthy addition to the saga. But it does have one hilarious, almost unmissable mistake. The game takes place on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in the hours of the night and early morning. Batman is being hunted by a slew of his most famous adversaries due to a very large sum of money being promised to the person who can kill Batman before the sun rises. Well, during a scene on a rooftop, Alfred, Batman's famous butler, radios him and wishes him a Merry Christmas. While this may seem like a wholesome moment, it's actually a completely miscalculated act of politeness, as in the very next cutscene, which takes place literally seconds after Alfred wishes Batman a Merry Christmas, the player can see a huge clock that very clearly reads 9 o'clock. And it's not like the clock is way in the background or something, it's literally the only thing in the camera for a solid 5 seconds. The player can literally only see a clock that reads 9 o'clock, clearly indicating that it's still Christmas Eve, and that Alfred is about 3 hours premature to be wishing Batman a Merry Christmas. I really don't understand how that one made it through the editing process. I mean, you would think that somebody would have caught the fact that the story just revealed the fact that it's officially Christmas Day, and yet the absolutely massive clock clearly reads 9 o'clock. But it's okay, it's not like this was in a game where the player is encouraged to look for clues as the world's greatest detective or anything. Oh, that's right, it is. Tough one. Next, classic Call of Duty toxicity. If anyone watching this video played the Call of Duty franchise since its inception, you would know that the game is famous for its toxic public lobbies and its gameplay being very easy to manipulate to your advantage, if you know what you're doing. However, COD developers have never been great at mitigating the risk of players taking advantage of possible broken setups or advantages, like Modern Warfare 2's or MW2 infamous one-man army and noob-tube combination, or Commando Pro in MW2, or the pre-catch akimbo model 1887s in MW2. If you couldn't tell, MW2 is the most broken game of all time, and could probably be the entirety of this list if we wanted it to be. But the biggest and most notable mistake in the COD franchise actually comes from a different Infinity Ward title in the franchise, one that almost nobody played because it was a garbage game for garbage people. I am of course talking about Infinite Warfare, which featured a DLC weapon that was so incredibly broken that it would kill any target on the map in one shot, at any distance, without requiring the player to aim. All they had to do was shoot the gun, and it would kill somebody on the map. I am of course talking about the hybrid sniper shotgun Proteus. This weapon was introduced at the halfway point of the game's life cycle, and it received a ton of backlash due to the accidental aimbot that came with the gun whenever a player was in sniper mode and not aiming down sight. The patch was fixed within the same day of the weapon's release, but not before receiving a mountain of complaints on social media. Honestly, it didn't matter too much because nobody played this game. But come on, how does a gun that literally kills instantly be allowed to make it into the game? A monkey could put up a good kill-death ratio with this gun prior to its patch, so how did Infinity Ward let this gun into the game? It still baffles me to this day, but much like the game this gun was in, let's leave this entry in the dust and move on to the next one. Up next, NPCs moving at the speed of light in Dying Light 2. This next entry is not a glitch or a system error. It's just a huge mistake that the developers of Dying Light 2 had absolutely no problem leaving in the game. While the gameplay is amazingly fun and the world gives the players tons to do and explore, there's a glaring issue that is impossible to avoid, and it's honestly super annoying. In the game, the player takes on the role of Aiden, a gifted runner and combatant who goes by the title of Pilgrim, which is essentially a glorified errand boy. During the game, Aiden runs into other survivors, which some are friends and some are foe, but either way, you end up having conversations with them. During a conversation, you usually have to be pretty close to somebody so you can hear them, and when you're done talking, you usually are still within that distance, right? Well, in this game, you would apparently be a silly sausage for assuming that, because the second you're done with a conversation, the NPC you were just conversing with is magically gone, seemingly teleported teleported to a different location by special powers or magic. Additionally, if you and an NPC are being chased by infected, which happens from time to time, if the NPC is ahead of you and goes through a door, they'll always close it behind them, making the player have to open it. But the weird part is, after the player opens the door, the NPC is mysteriously hundreds of yards away from the door. Somehow, the NPC traveled about 600 yards in less than a second. And yes, I know that one of the NPCs in the game is played by Rosario Dawson, who happens to play Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano in The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and in her own upcoming show. But I am certain that her character in Dying Light 2 does not have the Force, or the ability to move long distances in a short amount of time, but maybe that comes later in the story. Regardless of this weird and rather annoying inconsistency, the game is pretty fun, and if you like the first game, I would recommend this game. Next, The Rock has no teeth. One of the best titles in the PS2 and Xbox 360 era was the SmackDown vs. Raw wrestling game. It was easy to play, provided hours of fun, and was just downright hilarious to play. Whether you are a wrestling fan or not, it makes the wrestling games that come out now frankly look like trash, because to be honest, they are trash. But this game was pure fun and pure silliness wrapped up into a brilliant PS2 game. There were, however, some hilarious mistakes, but the best one, or worst one depending on who you talk to, came at the expense of superstar Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Obviously, The Rock got his start into fame by being one of the world's most entertaining wrestlers, but he got truly disrespected in the 2007 version of SmackDown vs. Raw. In the game, each wrestler had a few different entrances to choose from, but for The Rock, his entrances all saw him walk in with his signature straight-faced look, meaning that The Rock never had to show his teeth. However, in the game, players are given the option to replace wrestlers when a game has already started. So if a player starts a game and then replaces a wrestler, the new wrestler that the player chooses has to make an entrance. However, the game would make that player do the entrance of the wrestler originally chosen by the player, which means that a player could choose to replace a wrestler with The Rock and make The Rock do an entrance that is not his, making him show his teeth if that is what the entrance entails. This meant that many players had to witness The Rock enter the ring with a very toothless and gum-filled smile, because the developers never bothered to give The Rock a set of teeth, which seems a bit lazy, especially considering the set of pearly white the guy's got on him. Anyway, if you still have a system that can play this game and you have the game, give it a try. You won't regret it. That's all we've got for you guys today on the channel. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Which video game mistakes that we didn't mention today make you laugh or rage the most? Let us know in the comments section below. Thanks again, and we'll see you all in the next video.